Around the world. First POV. I spent a leisurely morning in my hater's home, eating everything he had while watching the news on TV. The reaction of the public and the actions of the Hero Commission were all amusing, to say the least. I could imagine the officials scratching their bald heads as they struggled to deal with villains after being coddled by All Might for decades. For the last 30 years, all they had to do was point at the villains and All Might did all the heavy work for them. The only real threat, All for One, was deeply connected with the corrupted officials, so they never really had problems with him either. But now that All for One was dead and All Might was defeated, everything was on them. At last, the responsibility that came along with the privilege they were enjoying for years, was on their shoulder, as it should be. I'd eagerly wait for them to fuck things up. I eyed the person taped on the wall. He was nosier than ever before and I could guess why. I sent a single slash at the tape and he fell on the floor. He wasted no time before running towards the bathroom. I chuckled seeing him stumbling to the bathroom door and I stretched my body on the couch. I kept close attention to his actions, making sure he did not call for help or try to sneak out of the house through the ventilation. Lucky for him, he didn't try such things and he came out of the bathroom with a relieved smile on his face. He froze when he saw that I was keeping an eye on him and he hesitantly made his way to the same wall again and tried to retape himself on it. "You can stop that," I said, stopping him as he hopped and tried to tape himself on the wall again. He was not nearly as scared as when we first met. It's been nearly half a day since I was in his house and I had not harmed him so far. He knew my intention was not to kill him. But he still shrunk timidly when addressed. "Do you have a car?" I asked. "And no. Why not?" "I can't afford one, the insurance these days are outrageous," he said with the smallest huff. "Fair enough. The insurance in a society like ours where collateral damage is the norm was truly outrageous indeed. Buying a car was the easy part, the insurance along with all the contracts that changed depending on your CORIC was just impossibly complicated and expensive. I have a scooter though," he added helpfully when he saw my disappointed look. I opened my mouth, and paused for a bit before I sighed. "That works." After threatening him to remain quiet about my visit, I left his home and made my way to the city of Osaka on a scooter. The streets were mostly empty but without any checking points, since it was not an official lockdown. I wore a big coat that hid my body and the patrolling heroes never expected Ryomen Sukuna to ride around in a scooter casually, so they didn't suspect anything and I was able to ride freely. It took me only about an hour to reach the city of Osaka without the traffic. I rode through the equally empty streets of Osaka and went to the abandoned bay. This was the location of the new underworld market after I had destroyed the old one. An abandoned industrial zone in Osaka Bay. It was a half-sunken island from a failed land expansion project. Originally, it was a very anticipated project that was meant to expand the city of Osaka, but it was left incomplete after the politicians pocketed all the funds. I casually strode into the island, and the few villains who saw me immediately ran for their lives. I ignored them and made my way to the biggest warehouse on the island, which was leaning a bit due to the uneven land. "Don't worry, I am not here to destroy anything. I've killed All for One already," I said when many villains got ready to charge at me as I entered the place. These were not causal villains but the owner of the black market and his goons. So instead of running, they would have fought for their lives if push came to shove. "So what brings you here then?" And he appeared, a villain known as Gaio the Broker. He was the unspoken owner of the previous underworld market and now, this one too. "Business," I replied curtly and he smiled a serpent smile before guiding me to a personal room. After we both took a seat I began explaining to him what I wanted. I needed a way to leave the country and travel around. All flights were booked and with the current state of the country, it was difficult to do so. "I can do it," the villain said as he leaned back on the couch. There was a small table between us as we sat on opposing couches. He was a villain with a snake-themed style, awfully similar to Orochimaru from Naruto. "But it'll cost you. You know." It is not easy to leave the country at the moment. How much are you willing to pay? He asked me. I frowned at that. I made a zipping motion with my fingers. He froze with a soft smile when the invisible slash cut half of his long hair and barely missed his neck. The slash continued and made a scar on the reinforced wall behind him. How much does your life cost? He was sweating, regret bubbled around his head in the form of negative emotion. He had gotten a bit audacious due to me saying I was here for business. Personally, I consider it priceless, Lord Sukuna, he said, and I nodded before I reclined on the couch. Then I will pay with that. Will that suffice? Most certainly, he said immediately with a bow, you are most generous. The statement was clear, do what I want and I won't kill you. At least that's what he believed. I will immediately work on your request and prepare a private jet, he said and stood up, his legs shaking a bit. Are you not going to make a contract? I said and stopped him from leaving. Known as the Venom Broker. His quirk allowed him to produce a certain type of poison that worked like a failsafe when making a contract with him. Basically, if you betrayed the contract made with him, the poison would react to your guilt and intent and it would kill you on the spot. It was a great quirk that allowed him to stay at the top for as long as he did in a world of villains that was full of treachery. I don't think that will be necessary, I trust that Lord Sukuna will uphold his promise, he said. I grinned at him, leaving him more unsettled as he finally walked out of the room. I guess with that I finally secured my way to travel. A private jet was arranged for me the very next morning and I left Japan with turmoils in my heart. Indeed I ran. There was no denying it. I was not the type to deny it. There were many things I could do in Japan, and there were more things I needed to fix. I should be thinking about how to clear my name, I should be concerned about the society I left fractured in my revenge, I should fill up the vacuum of power left by All for One's death. I should so much more. But I decided to leave all my problems behind. Because deep down I was so tired. Deep down I was so hurt. It has not even been 3 months since I completely regained my sense of self, and initially, I was too caught up in my own revenge to realize the state I was in. Maybe it would have been better if I had remained under the influence of the template. Everything was so much easier back then with the influence of the ancient curse. Now it's just me, and I was tired of all the shit that happened. A reasonable crash out, I justified myself. With a private jet and a pilot under me, I could go wherever I liked. The advanced aircraft didn't even need a runway to land, and the pilot had a quirk that allowed him to produce fuel, so I truly was free at the moment. At first, I preferred quiet places, out from the shadow of urban cities. The emergence of quirks came with many privileges, and that included the ability to maintain the environment. So although it was the 22nd century, the planet was greener than the century before. I visited places like Taiwan, Vietnam and North Korea, which was mostly forest areas after the defeat of the North Korean Communist Party DPRK. They were fun and peaceful places that provided the perfect conditions for me to relax, but only for a moment. The isolation and the silence soon became annoying as my mind started wandering back to Japan and my memories there. The things I was running away from caught up to me, and I decided I preferred the busy cities. 1 week. That was how long my vacation lasted in total before I was interrupted. Please come with us, we know who you are, a hero with ridiculous muscle mass but rather short height said to me. He was wearing a skin-tight suit that showed off each line of muscles, the color was red and blue. He also had a partner beside him, a striking woman who stood slightly taller than him. She wore a similar suit but with a more yellow color and a cape. Her blonde hair was tied into a high ponytail. I did not answer immediately, acting my part as a tourist who could not understand English. The salty breeze of New York Harbor blew on us, filling in the awkward silence that I created. Statue of Liberty, I pointed at the icon of freedom that towered over me, casting a shadow on the small island. I faked an accent, you take picture. You can stop pretending, we know it's you. The sunglasses did a horrible job at blocking our face recognition scanners, he said, and I pulled down my sunglasses slightly in offense. The sunglasses had 4 frames to cover my 4 eyes. Unlike Japan, where mutation quirks were discriminated against, here in America, they were idolized and almost fetishized, a product of endless parades and movements. They sold trinkets for different bodies, so it was not hard to find sunglasses that fit me. So tell me, who am I? I asked. Ryomen Sukuna, a villain from Japan and also the one who defeated All Might, he replied fast. And there was anger and bitterness in the last part. Right, All Might was quite a beloved figure even internationally, and the US was among the notable ones that really liked him. Apparently in his youth, All Might was trained here by her sensei, out of reach from All for One. Ah, I knew that there was a misunderstanding. The one you were referring to is my twin, I said. They were no longer in the mood for jokes. The muscular hero forcefully tackled me. He was successful too, as a shockwave erupted and I quickly found myself lying on the ground with the short hero on top of me. Adrenaline. I thought to myself when I sensed what usually came at the height of battle coming from him. But it was not so simple. My mind worked. Like always, I might be slow in certain aspects, but when it came to battle, I was unrivaled. I quickly deduced his quirk to be some kind of hormone control. That would explain his otherworldly muscularity. Fine, I said, and then blood bathed my body as I cut at the tendons on his shoulder. Ah! He bellowed and scampered away from me like a kicked puppy. I tried to sit up, only to be met with another attack from the other hero. Boom! After the male hero got away, a heavy force of golden light hit me and sent me flying away to the other side of Liberty Island. The coat I was wearing to hide my forearms was in tatters and my sunglasses cracked too, even though I was trying to protect them. I threw both disguises away while I stood up and slapped away the dust on my body. My torso was bare, revealing my black tattoos and supernatural body. My muscles looked sculpted, each definition sharp enough to cut. You think the two of you can stop me? I asked when they both came up to me once more. The man had clean cuts on both his shoulders, making his arms limp. That was just a warning cut, next time I'd take a whole limb. The two of us. Bitch, this is America, the female hero said, golden lighting shining under her costume. Energy projection most likely. At her declaration, every person on Liberty Island turned to me. They activated whatever quirk they had without hesitation. Sight reminded me of the fact that America doesn't have strict quirk regulations like Japan. America had a more military-inclined approach to quirk laws. People had the freedom to use their quirks, especially in the case of self-defense. I immediately changed my stance to leave no room for a blind spot. To my dismay, that was not all. The people who did not activate their quirk, either Curiclus or people with non-combatant quirk, pulled out their guns seemingly out of thin air. You gotta be shitting me. My reply came in the form of quirks and bullets as they bombarded me with no care for my safety. Legit, they were not holding back, there was no fear of accidentally killing me. From then on, things escalated even quicker as red alarms blared throughout Liberty Island. Jets flew above the sky, dropping more heroes in an attempt to capture me or kill me. Whichever was more convenient, I'd have to guess. The whole thing ended up with the destruction of Liberty Island and Lady Liberty being sliced into pieces. Land of the free, home of the brave. Yeah, I am never coming back again. Dash 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 dash. Author. Apologies to Americans if they get offended by this, I am just playing with stereotypes while expanding on world building. I swear I am cooking something with making Sukuna international like this. 47 comments 0 vote. New resolve. First POV. Ryomen Sukuna, the king of curse. The new international criminal. I released an exaggerated sigh after I read the news article title on the tablet. I was in a private jet, thousands of feet above the sky, but it no longer felt safe like it used to. I was sure the Americans were tracking this plane, they just hadn't acted yet. Even after a century and the emergence of quirks, the USA was still a superpower. This is exactly why I was declared an international criminal, even though I only caused problems in their country. I was really living up to Sukuna's title as the walking calamity, wasn't I? It was never my intention to make things worse for myself and my reputation, but I couldn't seem to do anything right. Especially when it came to the media, politics and the like, I was as clueless as any 17-year-old. Sukuna's memories were mostly of the Heian era and, that too, of Jujutsu and the history of that world, which were not relevant. Plus he never gave a fuck about what others thought of him. I had no memories that could help me in my situation, and there was nothing I could learn from him. I wonder what they thought of me now. I wonder what she thought of me now. For a fleeting moment in my short life, it was so perfect. I lounged on the seat of the jet and looked out at the window, gazing at the passing clouds as memories too passed in my mind. You stupid doe, I said, my eyes narrowing at the chocolate girl on the hospital bed, why would you do that? It was the aftermath of our first villain attack as UA students. A bunch of villains ambushed our bus while we were on our way to USJ to test its first facilities, most of it was still under construction. There were no casualties as the students along with teachers dealt with the villains swiftly. I personally dealt with most of the heavy hitters, so there wasn't anyone who was severely injured other than the rabbit girl on the bed. TCH, Rumi merely clicked her tongue and looked away with a pout. Mind you, her pout was not cute at all, it looked more like a snarl. Don't, TCH, me. You disobeyed me, and you were the one who said people must always listen to someone stronger than them, I said. Long story short, she meddled in my fight against the stronger villains and got herself seriously injured. She was one of the few people who knew my true strength, so I found it hard to wrap my head around how she came to save me. Not my fault, you were crying like a bitch, she snapped back at me. I was not. I was acting like I was losing the fight to let their guard down. It's a simple strategy. You were bleeding, you lost your arms. So that I could take advantage of their surprise when I healed them back. His defensive quirk gets stronger the more danger he thinks he is in, I said. She stayed silent, but it was not out of defeat but out of pure stubbornness. I am just disappointed you didn't believe in me and put yourself in unnecessary danger. You're one of the few people I shared my secrets with, you know I can heal broken arms, you saw the villains and knew they were clearly weaker than me. Why didn't you trust me? Why didn't you trust my words when I said I could take them? I said. I don't know. She screamed. I was taken aback when her red eyes bore on me. I was used to their dangerous shine and intensity, but what caught me off guard was the pool of tears in them. She was not crying, but close. And that was enough to baffle me because I never thought she could cry. She was always so strong and stubborn. I don't know, okay. I can't think of anything when I see you like that. When I saw them hurting you, it made my heart feel like it was sick. My body moved even before I could think of anything. She said, her loud voice echoing in the white room. Stop scolding me already, it came out soft this time as if her voice was tired from the outburst. I just stood there, regret bubbling in my heart. I had taken what happened in a completely different way. I thought she was questioning my own abilities, I thought she was going against me and my teaching so far. Rumi was a battle junkie who often dove into battles without a care for her health. I have been teaching her to not do such things and to always prioritize her health first. But now I knew she didn't jump into my battle because she wanted to fight, she was just worried. Worried for me. I blushed at the thought and reached out to touch her shoulder. Don't touch me, she said, trying to bite my hand since hers was broken. I pulled back briefly but ultimately pushed on. Her teeth chomped down on my hand. She looked ferocious doing so, but there was no pain. She did not bite down hard enough to even draw blood. She just glared at me with my hand between her teeth. You have one mouth, I have 4 hands, I said, and using my other hand I cupped her cheek. I'm sorry, I apologized sincerely, I was not aware of how you were feeling. Her eyes were soon to get soft and she let go of my hand as if to show that she accepted my apology. She nudged slightly against my hand with her lips, as if trying to soothe the pain from her bite. We stayed in the comfortable silence that followed, my heart beating faster than usual. I spoke only when it was about to get awkward. Maybe we should come up with a keyword, you know, something I would say if I really need help, I said, getting her attention. Her fallen ears perked up. So that you will know if I truly need help or if I am just acting to confuse the enemies, I explained. That's a good idea, she said. You think so? Then pick one for me, you are the one who has to come to help me after all, I said with a grin. It was not like I would ever need help from her. But if it made her feel better, then that was enough reason to do so. Because soon enough, I would be virtually invincible. I am not good with this type of thing, she said, and started listing off weird names and words that should act as a show for my genuine need for help. At one point she suggested, peon. I'd rather die than imitate the sound of hopping rabbits. This is hard. You always win all your fights, so just say not this time or something, she said at last. I chuckled, that's not even a word, but sure. If I ever need help against someone, I'll say, not this time, Mirko. She grinned, then I'll have to come running and help you win. You'll have to be a lot stronger than now if you ever want to fight alongside me, I said, and instead of rebutting, she just gave a look as hot as fire. Just watch me, I'll get there. It was the world's greatest wonder how she didn't have a lion's characteristic but a rabbit's for a quirk. It would have matched her character so much more. But at the same time, I love that about her. I love her contrasting nature. She was a rabbit, but she always acts more like a predator. A hot-headed girl, but she seemed to have the biggest heart. Even in appearance, snow-white fur on ebony skin, robust muscles on a feminine frame. It was like 2 different gods created her, a combination of 2 opposing ideas, yet she still came out perfect. Perhaps there was something in my gaze as I thought that. Rumi looked down and dark red dusted her chocolate skin. Indeed, this was the beginning of our love story. Lord Sukuna, we are here, the voice of my pilot echoed through the jet, bringing me out of memory lane. I looked down at the window to see the icy landscapes. My journey around the world was not over just yet, even if I had become an international criminal. And so I continued, from country to country, I wandered around the world of MHA. It was an escapism at first, a method for me to run away from my problems as I hoped the distance would swallow up my troubles. But by the latter half of my journey, I didn't even know what I was doing. There was no escaping my own mind, I realized that truth. But I kept going and continued chasing the horizon. Perhaps all this time I had been looking for something. A place of interest, a new beginning, or maybe even love. But the longer I searched, the clearer it became to me, I already had all those. They were all there, back at home. Cities blurred into forests, forests into deserts, deserts into oceans, and then back to the city I was. It had a different climate, different land, and different scents, but still, everything was the same. Every city in the world was similar enough to remind me of home. I never stayed in one place for long, hoping that if I was in constant motion the weight on my shoulder would slip off. It didn't. I made lasting impressions on some people, they became enemies while I saved more people. I found odd satisfaction in dealing with big issues around the world. If the problem could be solved by overwhelming power, I did so. And after a total of 2 months of traveling around the world, my journey came to an abrupt end as I've had enough. I could run from stagnant land, unmoving borders. But I couldn't run from myself. I picked up the phone kept inside the private aircraft. I gazed at it thoughtfully for minutes, wondering who I should call first. My first instinct was to call someone who was smart or smarter than me. I could call Hattori, Principal Nezu, or any other people I knew who had exceptional intelligence. But in the end, I typed in the number of the person I trusted the most in the world. And also the only remaining person whom I loved with all my heart. The phone rang as I pressed it against my ear. It rang once, twice, and then continued until it ended with no one picking up the phone. I chuckled at that, imagining her saying something like if they called only once and gave up, they weren't determined enough to talk to her. It was the dumbest excuse to not pick up a call, but it sounded like something she would do. So I tried again, and this time, I got through. Hello. Her voice sounded weak and weary. From what I've gotten from the news, Japan was already returning back to normal. The people's fear stopped after it was found out that I left the country to wander around the world. Was she exhausted from her class at UA? I could envision everyone going plus ultra with their training after the recent events. It's me, I said. She did not need further clarification to know who had called her. Her ears were special and they remembered the voice of everyone she ever talked to. She could tell who I was by the mere vibration of my voice. She stayed silent, but otherwise, she did not end the call. That's good. I could hear the abrupt end of her movement and breath even through the phone. Although we were lovers in the past, I found myself finding nothing to say. No, I had so much to say that they clogged up in my throat. Words competed so fiercely that none came out in the end. So I just started with the truth. I miss you. Followed by what I wanted to say the most. I know things are complicated beyond words. I know you must think I am an evil piece of shit like everyone else in the world. And I know you must hate me with everything you have right now, I said. But you all have been lied to. The line remains silent, but I can hear the sound of sniffs suppressed by an iron will. I couldn't even imagine what she was feeling. It must have broken her beyond what could be understood. I tried to escape at first, run away until things automatically became better, but I know now that that was a bitch move, I said, a sad grin tugging my face. I want to fix things, I want to reveal the truth to everyone. But I can't do this alone, I said. This time I would be fighting against something without a physical body. One I could not just overpower and win. Not this time, Mirko. And that line broke all the restaurant as she cried out. But she still did not say anything. I understood that it was hard to believe me, it would be like standing against the whole world. I'll show you, I said, and that was the last line I could say before the call ended abruptly. It did not even ring when I called again. The phone lady said she was unreachable. Let's hope that people found out about my call and cut it off, rather than her not believing me and declining to throw away my truth once more. I've spoken with words, now let's speak with action. Dash 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 dash. I updated 2 chapters. 10 comments, 0 vote. Pissed. Download the app for additional rewards. More events, more perks. Winning you more free perks. Download now. Willbe. Download app now. End of Preluge. First POV. Kurihara. A country that lingered on the edges of maps, a stain upon the world's conscience, a country no longer recognized by its former name, its past buried beneath the weight of what it had become. A country of villains. Once, Kurihara was an ordinary nation. Mid-sized, tucked away in a corner of Southeast Asia, it was the kind of place the world barely noticed. It struggled, like many others, a weak economy, rampant corruption, a government more concerned with appearances than progress. It was just like any other country, it had its flaws but millions called it their home. But all of that was gone now. The Kurihara that exists today was something else entirely. It was a nation with order carved from its bones, but not the kind recognized by the rest of the world. It was a kingdom ruled not by laws, but by control. It was a haven for the world's most dangerous criminals, not in rebellion, but in unity under a single ruler. Indeed, an extraordinary person emerged from this ordinary country. A human with one of the strongest quirks in history was born in this unassuming nation, changing her forever. The sovereign, that was what she called herself. One of the strongest supervillains in the world and someone who, more often than not, was put above All Might in the top 10 world's strongest beings. She was an evil worse than me, even from the world's perspective. And that was why she was perfect. Defeating her would be the first step to my redemption and revealing the truth. Until now, All for One had been very thorough with dragging my reputation into the mud. Killing the villains I left alive in my attacks to pit the deaths on me was only one of the few things he did. But if I were to defeat Sovereign and bring peace to the country of Kurihara, achieving what no intentional hero could do, that would get people to raise their eyebrows in question. That was the best thing I could come up with. I had no connections, I was truly alone in my journey. I had zero idea how to go on about digging through politics and media to save my reputation and make people believe in me. The experience of a 10-year-old locked in bed and an ancient curse was not so useful. What I did have was overwhelming strength. So if I beat this supervillain and save everyone, wouldn't that help? And so I did. My last journey was in Kurihara and the plan was as easy as beating the sovereign. The nation of villains believed in the system of might makes it right. Your strength determines your status. They didn't even help when Sovereign and I went into battle. They knew they would risk their lives by stepping into my domain, so no one did. Why would they? They did not have what decent people called loyalty or honor. They simply watched, making 2 plans ahead. It did not matter who came out the victor, they would do what benefits them. The battle raged for nearly a day as we nearly decimated the entire country in our battle. The battle was more intense than my fight with All Might and All for One, and she was also stronger than either of them. Her Choric, Void command allowed her to manipulate space itself. She warped us into different regions, throwing me through dimensions so that I could never get used to the environment. Her Choric was more destructive than my own abilities as she destroyed her own nation in the wake of our fight with no care in the world. But in the end, through planning and with the help of world-cutting Slash, I was able to defeat her. It was not an easy fight, it just went to show how dangerous the world of MHA is. The world was not limited to Japan, there were people out there who were just as strong as All Might. Finally, I am not alone, she said while she lay on her back, looking at the sky. Her pale skin was covered in her own blood as she lay there, limbless and naked. I regenerated my arms, which she blew off at the last exchange of our battle, and I grabbed her by the throat and held her in the air. I have killed every version of you in the last 24 hours, that's your limit, right? You can't reverse yourself past that, I said while I held her above me. It might look brutal, but I was actually keeping her alive with RCT. My other hands made a sign below, ready to slice her again if she pulled out that bullshit move of reversing time for her body. There were 86,400 seconds in one day and I have killed her 86,399 times. You were right, you win, she said, her white hair was unblemished and seemed to compete with the glowing sunset. Her sky blue eyes were not as beautiful as when I first saw them. Now they were red from the bursting of her optic veins. But they still looked mesmerizing. The binding vow we set up before the fight seemed to hum inside me, accepting me as the victor. It was just a failsafe in case she attacked me again after I won the fight. Are you not going to kill me? She asked in a weird voice after I loosened my grip and cradled her limbless body in my arms. That would be horrible for what I am trying to do. You are going to surrender peacefully to the UN or something, just like we promised before the fight, I said, and then walked away from the deformed landmass we were standing on. You really should kill me, otherwise I wouldn't stop coming after you, she said, more coherent this time. I narrowed my eyes. That was not part of the deal. Who said I'm coming after you for a fight? No, I am coming for something else, she said, and I blinked owlishly at what she was insinuating. Not interested in a granny. What are you, a century years old? You will spend the rest of your time behind bars, I said, and she hummed, smiling at a joke only she knew. You can't get rid of me now, she said. But I did. I threw the crazy bitch in jail, and just like I wanted, my feat got the attention of everyone. With the defeat of Sovereign, the international heroes finally had the ability to push through the crises in Kurihara, and everything was dealt with. Sovereign was someone who could rival whole armies by herself, and without her protection, the villain nation had no protection. It was the biggest crime bust in history. And the end of a dark era. Dash 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 dash. First POV. 3 months later. Nothing mattered, in the end. I failed spectacularly. There was always a consequence to every good I was trying to do. When I thought I made progress, I was pushed back 2 more steps. My battle in Kurihara only worked to feed fear to the people. You wouldn't believe how difficult it was to change the hate. People knew I could end them with a snap of my finger, and they found it easier to be afraid and hate me than to sympathize with me. I realized then it didn't matter if I was good or not. There was no fair judgment. Society functions with their emotions, and as a mass of negative emotion, I would never win them over. I couldn't do anything if I presented the truth to them, but they refused to believe it. I couldn't force them to believe it. I gave up. Everything that happened in the span of these months had crushed my resolve. My second life was ruined, it was unsalvageable. The only path for me was that of a villain. The people left me no choice but to be what they wanted me to be. But I wouldn't do that. I knew already from Sukuna's experience what kind of life that was, and I did not want any part in that. So there was only one thing that could save me now. Another chance, a third life, I said with a smile, feeling my own cursed technique inside my soul. This was not the cursed technique of Ryomen Sukuna, this was something that was my own. It was more like an actual curse than an ability, so I haven't used it till now. Cursed technique, Samsara. It was a cursed technique that allowed for rebirth as long as the user was facing his own death and his bloodline continued. In the context of my technique, facing death implies you knew what killed you, why they killed you, and how they killed you. You need to know your own death to face it. If I was assassinated, or if I missed one of those questions, what, why and how, the technique would not activate and I would die permanently. I also needed someone related to my own blood to survive so that I could be reborn as their son, or daughter. In my case, I would be reborn in my uncle's line of my family. It was a limited form of immortality. One could be reborn again and again, gaining more knowledge and power with each life until they became formidable. That was the nature of my technique. And so I made up my mind to use that technique. To give myself another chance in life and finally regain what I lost. But first, I made preparations. I took inspiration from the ancient curse and split my fingers into 20 parts. I hid them all throughout Japan so that when I died, all my powers would transfer to these fingers. And in my new life, I could regain my power. I was going to be born with all my powers regardless, but I would need to grow into them. Therefore, storing my powers and collecting them again was much easier. This way I could regain my full strength at the age of 10 and I wouldn't need to train to regain my prime strength. I was tempted to hide all 20 fingers in one place so that I could regain everything instantly, but I threw that idea out. In case someone found them, I would lose everything. There were no pieces of my soul in those fingers, so they were not indestructible like they were in JJK. I preferred being cautious instead of taking risks with high rewards. After I was done with all the necessary preparation, I planned for my own death next. Luckily, I was in a situation where I could choose what, why and how I was going to die. No one could kill me without my consent after all. The final hour. The Shinka Island. It was an artificial island located in Japan's exclusive economic zone. It was around 200 kilometers off the coast of Japan. With the size of 800 square kilometers, it was to be the largest artificial island Japan had ever created. The project was almost done, the landmass having been created, it was only in need of finishing touches. This island was made to deal with the growing population of Japan. In its completion, it would have been a place for industries and energy creation, relieving the country of occupied space. That was the idea until I took over the island. There were only a few workers and a plethora of worker robots when I went there. It was easy enough to evacuate the human workers and I was left alone on the large island. I sat on the sandy beach of the island, my phone was beside me. I used it to contact Rumi and my other friends non-stop in an attempt to explain myself. Basically, it was a beacon for the people to know my location. I also made sure to show myself in Japan before I took over this island. I met All Might for the last time, and although it didn't escalate into a fight, his sidekick Night Eye took a good look at me. So that's the plan. I was going to let them kill me here. Already. That is sooner than I expected, I said while looking at the blue sky above me. My 4 eyes locked on the jets flying over the island at incredible speed, but not before dropping missiles. Normally, no country was allowed to use nuclear weapons after the last nuclear war. But for the supervillain Ryomen Sukuna, who was strong enough to topple countries, they made an exception. I just smiled a sad smile and waited as the weapon of mass destruction flew at me. The advanced technology of this world allowed for better weapons, so the small missiles were enough to erase this man-made island from the map. There was no surviving this time. And that was the end. A story that started off happy, and became perfect in the middle, but by the end everything was lost. There was only regret and bitterness in the end. It was the end of my story, the end of Daigo Arata and Ryomen Sukuna. But the end of one story was just the start of another. Dash 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 dash. Author's note: yeah. This might just be one of the weirdest things you've read, but it's one of the weirdest things I've written too. Just let me cook. If not, it's okay if you don't want to go on this weird journey with me. What I will promise though is the satisfaction and the wish fulfillment that makes fanfiction different from any other medium. If I wanted anything else, in a story I'd write a novel. The soul of a fanfiction is always satisfaction. So yes, his old friends and lover would learn about the truth. Yes, female Gojo Sovereign will appear again. Yes, he will dominate everyone again, his loss of fingers would not make him struggle, and it will not be a nerf. That's all for this week. I will see you next week with the first chapter of the main story. I have created a Patreon for this book. There are no advanced chapters yet since this is the beginning of the story, but I will be taking polls that will decide how the story will progress from here. For example, whether MC should be in the original class with Midoriya, or a little older and in Mirio or Najire class, or if he should be independent. Basically, I will be laying out the formation of the story in the remaining week, and I'd sure love extra help and opinions on the chat room. Patreon, Willbe. Link, Patreon.com Willbe 2030, use Google. I'll also upload extra chapters as the story starts. 98 comments 0 vote. Rebirth. First POV. With the power invested upon me as your older brother, I order you to stop, he said while standing in front of the door, blocking me from leaving the house. I deadpanned at his righteous and determined face as if he were standing against a great villain. There is no such thing, I said and put on my outdoor shoes before I towered over him near the entrance. Oh, believe me, there is, he said, his eyes narrowing like slits as if daring me to go against his authority. Kato Arata was not a big man by any means, he was quite scrawny in fact, unlike me who already stood over 6 feet 5 and was built like a behemoth. No one would think of us as brothers, our similarity ended with our pink hair. But perhaps it was the effect of being the younger brother, I saw him as a huge obstacle I could not easily pass as he blocked the door. It's a phase, brother. A phase. We all go through it at one point. But there is absolutely no reason to do permanent damage and tattoo your body, he said, scolding me passionately. The UA exam was coming soon and the plan was to get tattoos similar to Sukuna's in order to increase the template. Whether it was mentally, physically or even reputation-wise, the closer I got to Sukuna the higher the template increased. It's not a phase, I grumbled. Not a phase. Are you hearing yourself? Last month you asked us to refer to you as Ryomen Sukuna. He exclaimed and I could only rub the back of my head in embarrassment. Indeed, tattooing my body was not my first option. I thought if I let people around me call me by the nickname of Ryomen Sukuna, I would be able to increase the template. But I found out you can't just give yourself a nickname like that. I would have to wait until I got a hero name to increase the template that way. But for now, the tattoo worked. I was already pretty strong, but I needed to be much stronger if I was going to go to UA High. What's the big deal? Not like you can't erase tattoos in this day of age. I grumbled. The big deal is mom would kill you. Like legit GACKK, he crossed his neck to imitate a cut. I'm not ready to hold a funeral for my brother, no way. I sighed. I knew that all too well. But better die at the hands of your mother than some second-rate villains. I grabbed Kato by the shoulder and simply moved him like he was some furniture. Sorry, I said and walked out, can't change my mind. But my brother being my brother didn't give up and he ran after me while I leapt down from the corridor of our 12-story apartment. I landed with a soft thud and immediately walked away. But before I could reach the bus station, my brother came running at me, clothes disheveled and breath haggard from exhaustion. You can. Ha. If you do, I swear I will get a tattoo too, he said, threatening me with his own. Safety. Was that a thing? Sure, suit yourself, I shrugged. I was sure that he would never do something like that. My brother was deadly afraid of needles and his character was not the type to get a tattoo. He followed me to one of the most popular tattoo shops in the city which I booked months beforehand to get with a specific artist. I got mine as I planned, it was quite an easy process with the artist's Korik and I got my Hine era tattoo. My template increased by 5% immediately. This was because not only was I imitating the looks of Sukuna, but the tattoos were marks and symbols of Jujutsu which helped with my cursed energy. Of course, these were also a mark of a heinous criminal in the Hine era. To my shock, my brother did not chicken out and really got his own tattoo just to stand by his words. I want a quote right here, he said while pointing at his thighs, a place where he could hide the tattoo. Put, never give up, he said and gave me a side eye as he did so. Of course, he would pick something cheesy. But something hilarious followed in an ironic twist as Kato could no longer endure the pain and trauma. So the quote was left unfinished, only the word, never, was inked on his thigh. I was dying of laughter the whole way back home. And of course, when my mother found out about it she was absolutely furious. I hid in my room at first but I had to show up at dinner and that was when I was busted. Daigo Arata, how could you? She asked, like I just raped a pigeon or something. You didn't even ask me before you did it. As an Asian mom, it was obvious she wouldn't allow it since I couldn't actually justify myself. So I preferred not telling her instead of disrespecting her words and getting a tattoo despite her saying no. I'm sorry, I said. You're in trouble now, you will. She was about to pour hell upon me, but a sudden cough from my brother stopped her. And there he was, my brother, standing on the chair of the dinner table with his legs bare and flexed with pride. On his thighs was the word, never, boldly inked. You too. What is wrong with this family all of a sudden? My mother sighed in exasperation. With target of her anger increasing to 2, it was a much better situation for me. In the end, she had to call my father, who just shrugged after taking a look. Don't write anything more in your body, otherwise, pretty cool. It fits you, he said in his usual brutal honesty. Dear. What else do you want me to say? It's done, but if they do it again, they won't get scot-free, he said, and that was that. I promise I won't do it again, I said with a relieved smile. Me too, my brother said, but he was cut off by Dad. No, not you. Yours is ridiculous, we need to finish whatever it was that you were planning to ink there. No. A family. It was everything I expected and more. They were God-given gifts, people who made sure you were never lonely in this cruel world. I wondered what my new family would be like, or if I would have a family at all. If I was completely honest, I would prefer not having a family. Because I didn't think I could ever call someone else mother or father except these two. Memories played out like dreams, they were so random and sometimes so insignificant that I questioned why I was recalling them instead of big events at the time of my death. That's right, I'm dead. Dying was weird, but in a comfortable sense of the word. Perhaps it was because I'd died before, but nothing felt foreign. It was like one of those heavy sleeps where you feel like it was a dream initially after you wake up. The memories in my head played randomly, and in the end came consciousness. The time was short and forever. It was both. I opened my eyes. And it was not what I was expecting. Instead of finding myself in a hospital, somewhere in the newborn ward, I was underwater. My body was smaller than I remembered, but not the size of a baby. The lack of control was not there, as I could feel strength under my skin, easily bending to my will. My heart thumped in my chest like a new machine, and my blood flowed through my body, giving me the sensation of burning even while I was submerged in water. I instinctively drew breath but only got water in my lungs. I choked, clarity hit me like a truck. Wait a damn minute. This wasn't a womb. Boom. I burst out of the capsule that was holding my body in water and I crashed onto the concrete floor of what seemed to be some sort of lab. What the fuck? I thought, but it came out as a voice. No, that wasn't me. I turned my head to the direction of the voice and found a short little old man with a bald head. I narrowed my eyes and observed his round goggles, his bushy white mustache and his wrinkled face that looked even older as he looked upon me with shock. I ignored him for a moment to take in the surroundings. A lab that was brightly lit up by white light. There were shelves, monitors, computers and other vials and whatnot in the room. The walls were made of thick concrete and I could tell with a glance that the place was heavily fortified. What was going on? I used my technique perfectly. I should be reborn as a baby of my relatives, but instead, I was here. I wasn't responsible for the situation, so that must mean. You, I said and narrowed my eyes at the old man. He was gone from his previous place and he was running to one table on the other side of the room. I saw him reaching for some kind of communication device and that was when I moved my hand. Slash. Dismantle flew out with a simple command and cut off the fingers that were reaching for the phone. The old man screamed in pain and fell to the ground while clutching his bleeding finger. It felt a little weaker and suppressed, but my powers were there. They could never be taken from me even in death, they were literally part of my soul now. I stood up and checked the new body I was inhabiting. I was completely naked so I could see the odd muscles of my body. Although those muscles looked newly made and had not seen any use yet. It was like I was in a new car. By the time I was done checking myself, the old man had crawled to one table and he took a gun from there. He propped himself up and took aim at me. I moved right then. My new body was guided by years of experience as I dodged 5 bullets while closing distance. I grabbed a steel chair while doing so, and when I reached him, I stabbed him with the legs of the chair. Ah! His scream was only overpowered by an explosion as I pinned him on the concrete wall. I skipped his vital parts, so even though the legs went through, they caused no serious injury except extreme agony. His stubby legs dangled as he suffocated on his own breath. His body tried to breathe and scream at the same time, but it was not possible. I could have been gentler, but there was no way I could go easy on someone who casually tried to take my life. Also, I was pretty sure what kind of a person he was from the situation in the surrounding lab. "Okay, mad scientist," I said while staring into his eyes through his broken goggles. "What's going on?" He passed out from the pain before he could answer my question. I guess I would have to find out what was going on myself. Dash 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 dash. Author: I'd assume no one expected that. Once more. New week, so please do give stones if you have some to spare. 47 comments, 0 vote. New life, new slave. First POV. Dr. Garaki. A mad scientist who had thrown away his humanity long ago in the pursuit of science and discovery. He was one of the most loyal subordinates of All for One, and in the canon anime, he was responsible for the creation of Nomu. He was an insane doctor who shaped flesh and bones into weapons, turning people into monsters and abominations. With the help of All for One and his ability to bestow quirks, he scarred the world with his creations. But with All for One's death in this world, what had become of the mad scientist? Well, the answer was before me. Dr. Garaki was unable to further his research and creation of Nomu without All for One's support and quirk, but he found another thing of interest to fill the gap. Me. Or should I say Ryomen Sukuna. From the many research papers I found in the lab, he considered me the next step of human evolution. He compared him to a newborn in China long ago who was the first one to be born with a quirk. He considered Sukuna to be the first of many to come. A foreshadowing of what the future held for the world. After all, Sukuna was curicless, but he could defeat All Might in battle. He was someone with a source of power different from the traditional way of quirks. He was the source of endless curiosity for Dr. Garaki. And so he spent countless years studying me, trying to find out what made me tick. With no physical body he could study, he went to my closest blood relatives and used them as research materials. At one point he stole the newborn baby of the Arata couple who came to his hospital for childbirth with the excuse of stillbirth. And that baby was me. Fuck. Was it forbidden for anything to go my way? Why must fate work so tirelessly to fuck me over? Please leave me the fuck alone. Unfortunately, that was all the information I could get since I had no way to access other files without knowing the passwords. I walked over to Dr. Garaki, who had passed out while his body was hanging on the wall like some decoration. He was pinned on the concert by the legs of a steel chair. I pulled out the chair from the wall and his body flopped down on the floor like a sack of potatoes. I grabbed his bald head and used RCT to heal his injuries and jolt him awake. His eyebrows nearly jumped out of his forehead as he jerked back from my hand. His wide eyes stared at me and he pushed himself away, distancing himself from me until his back hit the wall. I crouched down in front of him and we simply stared at each other for a while. I saw his fear slowly dissolving away when I did nothing else to him. His fear and nervousness were quickly replaced by curiosity and admiration. "You," he said and just gawked at me as if he could not believe what was right in front of me. Me. He blinked and his attention turned to his own body, specifically to the area where blood was spilled. He touched his chest and belly, surprised at the lack of wounds. "You healed me, how?" he asked, but his tone did not expect an answer. Instead, he was talking more to himself. "No, how are you alive? All the growth hormones should have killed the baby. But even if you were to survive, you shouldn't be able to walk, you shouldn't be able to talk," he said. Curiosity got the better of him as his hand touched my face. "Marvelous, you should only be a lump of flesh, an empty shell for me to study. But you are brimming with life force, so much life force in fact," he said. There was endless quiz swirling beneath his insane eyes. "Is it some kind of possession, Korik? Perhaps you rewind time from an alternate future." "Impossible, your Korik has something to do with healing," he guessed while stroking my face, and that was when it started to get weird, so I finally reacted. The moment I made a single move, he flinched back like a frightened animal. I put my hand on the wall, and he shrunk even smaller as I narrowed my eyes at him. "Please don't kill me. Please don't kill me. I can't die. I absolutely cannot die," he screamed, begging more than someone could for only one life. "If you kill me, you will kill decades of scientific knowledge. Knowledge about quirks. Knowledge about the dark truths of society. You will be destroying a relic of knowledge," he begged harder and harder every second. As a man of knowledge and science, he considered his death not only personally but also objectively a great loss. All that knowledge in his head, gone in one moment. He could barely shelter the thought. I tilted my head to show the zero fucks I give. "I will do anything, I will help you with anything," he said, and I finally hummed at that. He was not only just beginning his life anymore but was offering something in return. I considered that for a moment. There were few things that outweighed ridding the world of a mad scientist who was willing to experiment on people. But with the way things started out, I could use his help. Or more like I could let him fix the mess he created for me. "What can you do?" I finally asked, and it was almost freaky the way his sobbing face morphed into a hopeful one. Anything. I used to work under All for One, and after his death, I inherited a whole branch of his criminal empire. I am sure I can be of service. "I will be your loyal servant," he said, like a horrible salesman, which he kinda was. He was trying to sell himself to me. "Right, but why should I trust you to not stab me in the back the moment you get the chance?" I asked again. "Because you are way too intriguing," he said. "Come again." "I'm sorry, but by all means you shouldn't exist. Forget the astronomically low chance of your survival. You shouldn't be able to talk, you shouldn't be able to think. You should be like a newborn in a grown body, but here you are, skeptical of me when you should have no experience," he said. "And I have no explanation for it. The only theory I have is that somehow, you are like him, Ryomen Sukuna. What I'm witnessing is something beyond the power of quirks," he said, and I just stared at him. How did that explain why he won't stab me in the back? "I want to study you." The reason for my loyalty to my old master All for One was also I wanted to study him. "I am not a leader type, I prefer working under someone and being left alone with my research," he said, sounding a bit too passionate to my liking when he said he wanted to study me. He shook his head rapidly to get to the point. "The point is, I would love to work under you, even more than having my own freedom." I hummed. "Let's do it this way then," I said, and removed myself from his personal space to stand up. "We will form a contract through a binding vow," I said. It was easy really. Many sorcerers in the past have used this to make slaves from their defeated enemies. A binding vow. "Yes, and whoever breaks it shall pay with their current life," I said with a smirk, and then I began. I will spare your life, but in return, you shall serve me until the end of your days, or I release you from this binding vow, I said. Now it's your turn. You can negotiate a bit to your liking, I said. Ultimately, binding vows like this needed both parties to be satisfied. If not, it becomes unstable, and since binding vow works on will and intent, it won't work in the first place if you are unwilling deep down. I agree with your condition, he said, and added timidly, as if unsure if he could cross me when his life was literally in my hands. As long as you allow me to continue my research and study you, without doing anything to displease you, of course. He quickly added. Honestly, I could have forced him with no condition on his part and even put a tighter leash on him, but I didn't do so out of my own reasons. A servant who could not do anything without a command was worthless. That was why I said serve. He would serve my desire and even have the ability to do what I want him to do without me having to spell out every order. He would work for my good. And if he was to be serving me for a long time, I couldn't start our relationship with force. He needed to feel like he had a choice and something good came out of the situation for him. Sukuna would know that Ryomen was his most loyal servant, and that was how she first went under him. Okay, both party agrees, I said, to which he nodded. At that moment we both felt something settle in place, deep within our soul. Dr. Garaki looked visibly intrigued by what just happened. Was that magic? It couldn't be a Korok, he asked with barely veiled excitement. Who knows, I answered with a shrug. Do you have a phone? He nodded and took a smartphone out of his lab coat. The phone was still functioning properly even with a cracked screen. I caught the phone when he threw it at me. Good. Now clean this place up while I check some things. The lab was currently in a mess after I did my own research while he passed out. The drawers, shelves and safe were all opened or destroyed, and there were papers and files everywhere. I turned on the phone, which had no lock screen, and immediately gazed at the date on top of the screen. The 17th of March 2149. 9 years, almost 10, I mumbled while looking at the year. Then I sat down on one of the chairs in the lab before I started surfing the internet to find out the major events I missed during this past decade. Dash 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 dash. Author, please do spare some stones for me. The story is updated 2 times every day on my Patreon. Support me if you like the story. Patreon, Willbe. Link, Patreon.com Willbe 2030. Use Google. 36 comments, 0 vote. To be continued.